Hello again. I just want to start this video by thanking people who watched and commented on my last video. Okay, I'm sorry, I saw a video they have to hook viewers in the first 10 seconds so they'll leave, so hopefully that worked. But I know that in life you can't always quickly change your circumstances, but you can change your attitude about your circumstances. And my last video was an attempt at forcing myself to have more hope and be more positive about the world and my life. And the amount of complete strangers who found that video and then commented words of encouragement truly meant the world to me. So seriously, thank you. And as I was thinking about what I wanted to make my next video on, the Kimberly-Clark and Amazon warehouse fires were in the news, and it caught my eye and made me think about two things. First, my favorite novel I've read in the last 5 years, The Will of the Many by James Islington. And second, why capitalism isn't so great. I know, hot take. So I figured I would talk a little bit about why I liked the book. The story focuses on an orphan named Diago living in a world governed by the law of the hierarchy. Diago is a prince of a foreign land, and after his family was killed and people conquered by the hierarchy, he is forced to hide and live as Vis, working in what is essentially the prison system. The hierarchy is built upon every person falling into certain ranks of a pyramid. Everyone must cede their will, sort of like life force, to the hierarchy to be used by those higher up in the pyramid. And will can be used in various forms, but essentially it is power. So the very few at the top wield impossibly high amounts of power, while the vast majority of society is at the bottom, ceding their will, hoping for a chance to move up the ranks. Sound familiar? It was taking me multiple months to get through the first part of the book when I scheduled an appointment with my friend who is a tattoo artist to get my first tattoo. I thought it would be cool to get tattoos since I was in my early 20s, but my perfectionism always kept me too anxious of making a mistake to get one. But I have slowly been trying to shed that overwhelming fear of not doing the perfect thing at all times. So I decided to just make an appointment and force myself to choose something. I had about 5 potential ideas that I, of course, couldn't decide upon, including the shards of Narsil from Lord of the Rings. I love the Lord of the Rings, and Aragorn's character journey is one of my favorites in all of fiction. But of course, I overthink everything and wondered if getting a sword is cringe or some other dumb excuse. I don't know. But I got to the appointment super early because I was nervous, so I pulled out the Will of the Many to kill time in my car. It happens pretty early in the book, so I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but Diago finds himself being recruited by the Angui, a group of rebels trying to overthrow the hierarchy. I think because of self-doubt and maybe fear of what he would have to do, Diago resists, begging for another way, but the Angui leader set on using an imperfect tool to help carry out their revolution calmly responds, "A broken blade can still cut, Diago." I'm not sure Islington even intended for that line to have such an impact, but I sat in my car tearing up. So much of my life I have felt like that broken blade, wanting to make a difference in the world, but feeling too broken or flawed to do much of anything of value. But the sword that cut the ring off of Sauron's finger was shattered. We don't have to be perfectly put together to change the world. I finished the last 400 pages in 3 to 4 days after that. I really enjoyed the plot of The Will of the Many, and the characters felt interesting and complex, and the ending was great and left me hungry for the next book. But I think the most interesting part of the book for me was the actually pretty thinly veiled critique of capitalism. I'm not exactly using deep critical literature skills to understand that Islington meant for the hierarchy to be a pretty direct representation of capitalism. The hierarchy relies on the lie that everyone gets the ranking that they deserve, and all that it takes to move up in society is hard work and skill. But the truth is that the true power of the hierarchy requires the lowest of society gladly giving up their will, clinging to the hope of gaining power that will never come. Because the reality is that those at the top need to keep those at the bottom or they have no power. But they have to keep alive the false hope that the system is fair and everyone can move up if they just work hard enough. Diago's friend at the academy gives a very good summary. How hard you work and how smart you are is not irrelevant, obviously, but they are only factors in a much larger equation. You keep thinking of it as a fair system. Be good enough and you will be justly rewarded. Best rise to the top, all that rotting nonsense. Do you think that every single Septimus that is stuck in their position is somehow less talented than every single Sextus? A fair system only works if there's an unbiased means of assessing merit. You need luck more than effort. You can't expect to just be promoted because you should be. The Republic rewards people who take, not who deserve. And in a flashback, Iago's father gives my favorite critique of the hierarchy, and therefore capitalism.
No country's governance is perfect. Anyone who looks at a system of people and thinks the system is the problem is a fool. But I also want you to understand that the hierarchy is far more insidious, because it is not imperiled by a flaw, but built upon one. Greed. Greed is the moral ruler of the hierarchy, Iago. All decisions are based upon it. It is not the strong who benefit in their system, no matter what they say. It is the weak. It is the ones willing to do anything, sacrifice anything, to rise. It rewards avarice and is so steeped in a wrong way of thinking that they can't even see it. There's no form of government that is immune from mistakes or from corruption, but it is the hierarchy's foundation, son. Never forget that.
There seems to be this massive lie that is perpetuated by proponents of capitalism that we get what we deserve. If you are poor, it is what you deserve. Your decisions, your mistakes, your lack of skill, your lack of hard work have made you poor. But if you're wealthy, you have earned everything you have and you deserve it. Not everyone poorer than you is lazier and less skilled than you. Not everyone richer than you is more hardworking and more skilled. I know that in your workplace, you have had bosses or managers or just people who make more money than you that absolutely are not more hardworking, intelligent, or skilled than you. I certainly have. They either got lucky and were at the right place at the right time, or they just played the game better. As Iago's friend said, they took, they didn't deserve. And there is certainly truth that most people who have lots of wealth are incredibly smart and talented and have worked extraordinarily hard. And it might be true that you have worked hard and made good decisions, and you certainly deserve to be rewarded for that. But it is such a lie that you have gained your wealth on your own. Wealth requires squeezing profit out of the labor of others. That is what capitalism is based upon, not merit or freedom or hard work. It is fundamentally about creating profit at the expense of others. And there is no end to the innovation of maximizing profit, whether that comes at the cost of the employee or the consumer. Which leads me to the actual main point of this video, a history lesson. One of the most truly destructive aspects of capitalism in America, in my personal opinion, was established back in 1916. Ruled in Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, it is called shareholder primacy. Henry Ford had revolutionized transportation and the world with the mass production of the Model T. Finally, an automobile was cheap enough to produce and sell that people other than the elite could afford to purchase them. This obviously led to the company being very successful and accumulated over $60 million in profits, which would be close to $2 billion today. Instead of simply distributing the profits and dividends to the shareholders, Ford wanted to use the money to invest back in the company, opening new plants, creating more jobs, and cutting the cost and price of his cars. He publicly stated, "My ambition is to employ still more men to spread the benefits of this industrial system to the greatest possible number, to help them build up their lives and their homes. And to do this, we are putting our greatest share of the profits back into the business." Now, to be clear, Henry Ford was pretty notably a piece of shit and anti-Semitic, so it's likely that he didn't really care that much about the employees or consumers, and he just wanted to screw over a few of the major shareholders. But the biggest of those shareholders, led by the Dodge brothers, insisted that Ford's duty was to the shareholders and not to the employee or the consumer. Their dividends must be paid, and they took him to court. Court ruled in favor of the shareholders, claiming that profits to the stockholders should be the primary concern of any company director. In their ruling, they stated, "A business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. The powers of the directors are to be employed for that end. The discretion of directors is to be exercised in the choice of men to attain that end, and does not extend to a change in the end itself, to the reduction of profits, or to the non-distribution of profits among stockholders in order to devote them to other purposes."
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Now, maybe I'm taking crazy pills, but I feel like this sucks ass. And it explains exactly how all major corporations act and treat their employees and consumers. It doesn't matter how poorly we treat our employees, and it doesn't matter how much we take advantage of our consumers. Profits for those shareholders must be maximized at all costs. So many companies seem to follow the model of taking advantage of a good or service that becomes popular and profitable. And then the company directors slowly cut costs and quality and increase prices to squeeze every last drop of profit for the shareholders. Just think of one tiny example: video streaming services. Getting quality content at the click of a button with no commercials and low prices completely took over the entertainment industry. It was truly an innovation that changed the industry and was massively popular. Now, slowly since, if you check the average streaming service, the amount of quality content offered is significantly less, and there are commonly ads added even for paid versions, and yet prices have increased. It fundamentally does not matter how much the employee or consumer suffers, as long as profits for the shareholders are prioritized, which is what reminded me of the Kimberly-Clark and Amazon warehouse fires that just happened. I don't really want to talk about the individuals involved or the morality of rebelling against a corporation in that way. No one is going to watch this video and change their mind on that. But I just want to highlight the results of prioritizing profit over people. Did you know that Kimberly-Clark had an operating profit of over $2.6 billion last year? Did you know that instead of using their profits to improve their business or, God forbid, reward workers or lower prices, they have spent over $1 billion over the last 2 years on stock buybacks to increase stock prices for the shareholders? Did you know that their average warehouse worker makes $49,000 a year? And if they gave all of their overnight warehouse workers a $10,000 annual raise, it would only cut their annual profit by less than 1/3 of 1%? Did you know that Amazon had a net profit of over $77 billion in 2025? Did you know that when a warehouse worker dies on the floor, employees are instructed to ignore them and keep working? Did you know that they decide to lock workers outside in the middle of a tornado? Did you know that despite only making $18 to $20 an hour, Amazon warehouse employees are almost twice as likely to be seriously injured than at industry competitors, with about 26 out of every 100 workers experiencing a serious injury? To me, this is fundamentally evil. A system prioritizing and enriching the already wealthy tiny minority while taking advantage of the majority is unjust, immoral, and predatory. At its core, capitalism is not about freedom, it is about profit. And like Diago's father said, a system built upon profit is built upon greed. Greed is not a result of capitalism, it is the entire point. And I personally don't want to live in a society built on greed. I want to live in a society built upon justice for everyone, equity, true freedom, and love. And I'm not saying that corporations should be non-profit. You have to make money to run a successful business. But at what point is billions of dollars of profit at the expense of the worker and the consumer enough? At what point do you treat your employees fairly and not just drain the consumer for every possible drop of profit? And I'm not sure what the answer is. I don't know how you get US corporations to stop prioritizing the shareholders. I think Diago's father is right again when he said that no system involving human beings will be perfect. Especially when you combine flawed humans with power, there will be abuse, no matter the system. But the system that makes the most logical sense to me at creating the most just and fair life for everyone is some form of democratic socialism. And I grew up conservative and surrounded by conservatives, so that is a very hard thing for me to admit. A system where innovation and ingenuity is still rewarded, but through common sense regulations and strong unions and high taxes on the ultra wealthy and corporations without loopholes. The employee and consumer are not being taken advantage of and abused. Their labor is still being used to create wealth, but at least some of that wealth is being returned in the form of healthcare and social safety nets and strong investment in education, so on. And ideally, the Conservative Party would not just constantly bow to the oligarchy, but instead focus on finding the areas of waste and fraud and where regulation should be tweaked or changed. Conservatives should be the party of making the government work better for the people, not eliminating taxes and social programs in order to benefit the wealthy. And I'm not saying that wealthy people and corporations shouldn't exist, but if you are going to squeeze your employees and the consumers for every last possible drop of profit for the benefit of the shareholders and your bottom line, then fine. But you should be taxed at a rate that allows the people you are squeezing to still live lives of dignity. And I've seen this comment so much lately on social media regarding either taxation, social welfare, or income inequality. Technically, you are not entitled to the fruits of another person's labor. Motherfucker, that is exactly what free market capitalism does. That is exactly what your boss is doing to you right now. That is exactly what the shareholders of your company are doing. They are taking the profits created by your labor and then buying a summer home, you stupid bootlicking chud. You complain about paying for taxes that pay for schools and libraries and roads and things that actually make your life better. But you bend over and let corporations and shareholders spread you apart and say, "Thank you, sir, may I have another?" It makes no sense to me. And there could be an entire other video about government funding and how 50% of the budget is for the military industrial complex, and there is common fraud and abuse. I'm not going to argue that our tax dollars are currently being spent wisely, but progressive policy is at least trying to make your life better, while current conservative policy is about tricking poor and middle class people with inflammatory social issues into voting to line the pockets of the ultra rich. There seems to be such an incredibly shallow view on wealth from the "you can't spend other people's money to redistribute the wealth" crowd. Wealth is not created in a vacuum. Either your labor or purchases are being used to create wealth for other people, or you are using the wealth and consumerism of others. No one is just magically creating wealth through their own hard work and determination. Jeff Bezos doesn't rub his bald ass head and $1 billion pops out. He makes money by selling products to consumers for higher cost than the cost of the labor required to produce and distribute those products. Millions of people are working hard to create that wealth for him. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't make money. Jeff Bezos had a great idea and worked very hard and innovated on that idea and innovated some more along with his business partners. And he deserves to make a lot of fucking money. But when will he have enough? Jeff Bezos has more money than a person could spend in 1,000 lifetimes. The average Amazon employee would have to work over 1,000 years in order to make the amount of money that Jeff Bezos spent on his fucking wedding. Is that not a sign of a system that is broken? But like in the hierarchy, people happily cede away themselves to capitalism, ceding their time and labor to those higher up in the system because they cling to the dream that they will one day join them. But that dream is a lie. So I'm not saying that we should start burning down warehouses, but we have to stop ceding our will to capitalism and not demanding anything in return. Thank you for watching.